Hey everyone, this is Steve from CG Geek back with part 6 to our modern interior tutorial series in Blender. So this is the part a lot of you guys have been waiting for. It's where we start adding in the lighting and start with the materials, working on finishing our scene. So this is where all your hard work pays off and you start to see everything come together in a beautiful looking render. Alright, so to start, we're going to be making sure that we are using Cycles Render. Up on top, switch to Cycles Render, and you'll be rendering in the correct render engine. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and split our window here, so we have another window for materials. I'm going to change this to our our node editor. I'm just going to hit N to close that off, and I'm going to select our walls and our beams, and I'm going to go to our Materials tab by bringing it up over here, and going Use Nodes, and we'll have a basic node material here now. I'm going to go ahead and delete the diffuse because we're using Blender 2.79 and we're using the new principled shader for realistic PBR materials. So I'm going to go ahead and connect that up. Our base color might be slightly warmish, but pretty much you can leave it at that. And yeah, that will be our main base material. Now I want this kind of base material on all of our objects except for our nature right now, and then we're going to be modifying it for all of our other materials. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything in our scene. So do that, and then I'm going to just unselect our nature. Okay, but you can select everything else around your nature still, but unselect our nature. I'm unselecting by middle mouse wheel box selecting if you guys were wondering. And unselect you, but select you. Okay, so if I grabbed everything but the nature is moving, it looks like. There might be, yeah, there's a little plan down here too that I have to unselect and then select you guys. All right, that can be selected too. You, yes. Cool, I think we have everything selected. Oh, nope, that window too. All right, now everything is selected. I'm going to go Control L, make links, materials. All right, so now every object has this PBR material applied to it. Now let's set up the lighting. So I'm going to be using first of all, the denoiser feature in Blender 2.79 because every interior scene in Cycles is going to deal with some grain because of the number of light bounces and everything. So you're going to really benefit from using the denoiser feature in your settings here. I'm going to choose denoising, and we really don't have to change these settings. It's pretty good on auto. We can just leave it. But we're going to use that to get a cleaner image. And then we're going to be using some HDR lighting and some light portals to reduce noise and give us our finished results. So let's first open up an HDR. So I'm going to switch to our world settings, use nodes, click the little checkbox next to the color and grab the environment texture, and let's open up our texture. So this is the balcony. It's a free HDR from HDR Haven. I'll link to it in the description, but go ahead and download that. And we're going to connect that up. Now in our node settings, we're going to have to go down to our node materials right there. And this is where we have our HDR loaded in. We got to go to our world nodes there. And I'm just going to add in 2 more nodes, and that is a texture coordinate by hitting Shift A, and then a mapping. So that's a vector mapping node. Drop it in there to generate it into the vector and vector to the vector. And now we can kind of tweak the position of our HDR here. Okay, so now to orientate the HDR in the right rotation, we're going to go to a new layer here, just so we don't have to render everything else in the background. I'm going to go Render to View, and this will open up the HDR in the background here. And I'm just going to orientate my Z axis to be right around here. So we have our main light source kind of beaming through. That's going to be right around the right spot for us. And then we're going to go to our color settings here, under our color management right here, our scene settings. Under color management, we're going to choose Filmic. So this is another 2.79 feature, and it's pretty much the coolest thing. It gives you way more control over your highs and your lows and your colors. So you're going to have a lot more control over the lighting in your scene. So switch to Filmic, and we'll go Filmic Log right there. And now we can kind of crank the exposure quite a bit higher on this HDR. So we're going to go up to about a 2.5. And then we're going to take the strength of our HDR and make it about a 1.8. So we have a very bright background image now. All right, so if I save this now, and I go to our 3D view, let this render out, and it's a little preview here, we should see our scene getting some nice added lighting to it. So now this is very noisy, but it will eventually clean up, and we'll start working on actually reducing some of that noise by adding in our light portals now. So this is going to help a little bit. It helps more in certain situations where there's only really one light coming in, but it does help a little bit in this case too. I did some checking, and we're going to use light portals. So we're going to drop our cursor at the window there, and we go Shift A, add in a lamp, an area lamp. All right, now we'll rotate this 90 degrees along the y-axis. So it's our x-axis, is it? We want it to be facing us. Let me go. All right, it's facing away from us right now. So I'll rotate it 180 along the z-axis. So now it's facing towards us. And I'm going to scale it down just so we have that line a little bit more reasonable. But then I'm going to go to the area settings here, and I can change the size of it to be quite a bit bigger. And we want this to fill our door. So something like that looks to be right. Pull it back just a little bit. And then I'm going to scale it along the x-axis to fill our door completely right there. And that looks good. Now we're going to choose portal. And then you suddenly lose all your other settings there because it's going to not be using a lamp setting, but it's going to be using a portal. And it basically helps tell the Blender Cycles engine that this is where the main light source is from. And so it will shoot the bounces back at that and help reduce noise in theory. It helps more in certain scenes, like I said, but we do see a little bit of improvement doing it here too. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it by hitting Shift D, pulling it over and pulling it up, and we'll scale it to kind of fit, whoops, updates available. Scale to kind of fit the window here, and then pull it down along the x-axis a little bit by hitting S and X, and fit it into that window there. All right, we'll do this window up here as well. Scale along the X, pull it over, and scale along the Z a bit. Now we do have a few more windows that we added here, so we might as well add them to that as well. Can't hurt, so I'll just Shift D, rotate 90 degrees along the Z, and we'll pull it over here, pull it down, pull it over, right in line with it, pull it down, go to side view, hit 5 on your number pad so you can see this nice and easy. Grab it right to the door there, scale it along the Z, and scale along the Y. Grab it right to the window there. Yeah. Okay, that one's good. Shift D, rotate 90 along the Z again. We'll go to front view this time so we can see this is the window here where we need to fill. So drop it right in there, and then we just have to scale along the Z axis until we fill that window. And then we can pull it back into the window frame again, right about there. And that should do it. So that should help reduce the noise a little bit. Like I said, sometimes you'll see more results than others, but that is how you use a light portal and should help reduce the noise a little bit in our scene. Okay, so before we can really get to the materials, we need to unwrap the materials that are going to have textures on them so we can nicely lay the textures out on them. And that's mainly going to be the wood materials and the couch. So let's just go ahead and unwrap those. So for the poles, we're going to have to line a few UV cuts real quick to unwrap them. If you're unfamiliar with unwrapping, it's basically just unwrapping the UVs onto a 2D picture so you can wrap a texture around them. That's the basics. So I have to drop a few seams though on these. So to do that, I'm just going to Alt-click and grab the edge loop there. And it kind of helps if you go to edge view for this. And then Alt-click, grab an edge loop along the edge there. All right, I'm going to hit period so I can zoom around that a little bit better. And then towards the bottom, Alt-click, whoops, not that. Alt-click that, Alt-Shift-click that bottom ring right there. So we have a ring on the bottom, a ring along the side, and a ring on top. And if I go Control-E, mark seam, we'll have that split the way we want it. And then if I open this up here to the UV image editor, we'll be able to see when I unwrap this how it works. First, let's go ahead and open our wood texture. So this is the first texture I'm opening, so I'm going to say now that all the textures are available in the YouTube video description, so check that out if you want links to these, and most of them are from cgtextures.com. You can get a free account there, and you can download up to 15 textures every day for free, so go ahead and do that, and you'll be able to download all these textures. So I'm going to use this wood texture here. It's the one I use for most of the materials in this scene. And I'm going to go Control E, mark seam like I did, and then I'm going to select everything on that pole by hitting L, U, and unwrap. And you can see we have our pole here. So rotate that 90 degrees, line it up right there, and that should be good for that. And we're just going to do the same thing on both of these, or all three of these. So grab that, grab a seam that's not really visible to the camera and the inside, and then grab that top seam. Same thing over here. Grab a seam in the middle there for the bottom ring, a seam along the edge, and then a seam along the top. Control E, mark seam. Let's grab both of those and unwrap them. Rotate them 90 degrees so they're orientated along with the grain, and that should work fine. We can grab this one and pull it in there too so we're not along a seam. Cool. So we might have to tweak those UV textures a little bit once we put the texture on it, but for now we have the basic unwrapping working. So for this, we're just going to U and Smart UV Project, because this is a lot of square edges. Doing the Smart UV Project should work okay. And I'm just going to grab these and rotate them 90 degrees. And that should actually work okay. Maybe scale them up a little bit bigger. We'll have to work with that later a little bit maybe if we see any issues, but otherwise we're good to go. And then we have another log here. Now I'm just going to quick select all the rings on top by Alt-Shift clicking them, right clicking them, and then the rings on bottom, grabbing you, pull it over here, grabbing you, pulling over here, grabbing you. Whoops, I got the edge there. That's okay, I need that too. So now we're just going to grab an edge on each of these coming up. Cool. And then we can go Control E, mark seams, grab it all, U, unwrap, and rotate it 90 degrees. Scale them up a bit. And I probably want to scale these along the x-axis a bit as well. Alright, and then just grab this by hitting L and putting it in there. This is also unwrapping the beam up here, but this isn't really visible, so I'm not even going to worry about that right now. Alright, so I'm going to unselect everything here, and that will do it for these wood surfaces. Now let's go ahead and unwrap the stairs. So to unwrap the stairs is super easy. We just have to do it in two sections, and that's just going to be grabbing the top faces on every step. So I'm selecting the top and bottom faces by selecting through the mesh there. So all of these all the way up the stairs. Whoops, Control Z if you unselected the wrong thing. Just grabbing both faces all the way up the stairs. Good. Good. I selected the pole there a little bit, but that's okay. Good, good, and good. So with that selected, I can go U, unwrap, and we have all of our different faces here. I'm going to have to scale these along the y-axis a bit to make them more the right size to kind of fit the shape of the stair. So scale them along the y a bit, like so, and that will be good. I might have to also position these if they're not lining up right, but for now I'm just going to leave them because we can always scale them around later. And then I'm going to grab the edges real quick on all of these and unwrap those. So just unwrapping it in sections is sometimes just the easiest way instead of doing any sort of seams or anything. And you can place a separate piece of wood on the edges then. So it kind of looks like the stairs are laminated or something. So it still works out nice and realistic and is probably the quickest way of doing it. So go ahead and grab just the edges of your stairs. Control Z that, and go U, unwrap. Again, let's scale these up along the y-axis a bit. And we should be good to go. Some of these are a little crooked for some reason, so I can just grab them along the y and straighten them out so they look better. Alright, this one too. Doesn't really matter, probably won't be noticed, but just in case. Alright, so that wood is done. Now we have a little bit of wood on the surface here that should be unwrapped. So I'm just going to grab these edges, looping around the bottom here, And that's about it. So I can go U Unwrap, scale this along the Y to kind of fit our board here, and that will work good. We have this little object here, and again, I can just go Smart UV Project for something like this that's not going to be super visible and just have a lot of little edges, and that should work fine. We might have to tweak it a little bit, but for the most part, it'll be good. And then we have our cabinets here. So for these, I'm going to use kind of the same process as the stairs, where you just kind of grab the main faces that are going to be visible and unwrap them. So it's kind of a cheaty method of unwrapping. If you were going to really do nice close-up shots of these, you might have to unwrap a little bit more. But for this is all that's visible to the camera. And even for a semi-close-up, it would work. So I'm just grabbing all these faces along the way to unwrap. And then the inside faces here will be visible too if I didn't select those. Okay. And I don't think the bottom ones will be visible. So I'll go U Unwrap. We have all of our boxes. It'll have to be scaled up a bit to fit the wood nicely. And then I can also select these bottom ones just in case they are seen by the camera and unwrap them separately. There we go. Okay, so we have all that wood unwrapped. Another board here. Let's just grab that. If we go unwrap, will that work? No. Alright, I'm just not going to bother with that edge face there, and we can unwrap it. So I'm not selecting the back edge face right there, and just the other three. And that will work well to unwrap them then. Cool. This one might need to be rotated, scaled along the X. This one will just have to be scaled up a bit. Okay. So I think we just have the shelf over here to unwrap now, and the couch, and then some of the cushions. But besides that, the unwrapping process is almost done. So for the wood here, we can pretty much do the same thing. We're just unwrapping 3 sides of it. Going U Unwrap and scaling it up. Okay. Over here as well, 3 edges. U Unwrap. This will have to be scaled a little bit to fit correctly. Top one as well. 1, 2, 3, right there. U Unwrap. Scale along the axis a little bit just to make it bigger. And then on the end here as well. Ooh, there's a little bit of high-pitched noise in the background right now. I might have to wait for that to stop before I continue, if that's annoying. Oh, it sounds like it's stopping. Okay. So with that set up, we might have to tweak those a little bit, but that should be good for the most part. Let's unwrap our couch. So this should be the last thing we need to unwrap. The couch and the cushions, I guess, because we have to put a pattern on those, but those are super easy. So for the couch, we need to add just a few seams, and it's just separating the edges, basically. So I'm going to grab our tool here, our edge select. I'm just going to select these edges across the back and around. Basically, right there too. Basically just separating the edges from the front. Alright, so same thing over here. That edge, that edge, that edge. The top one coming over, and then the top right there. Whoops. This one right there. Perfect. So all the way across on both sides, Control E, mark seam. And then just that bottom back edge right there is all we really need. Let me see. Not that one, but this one. In the very back. Alt click that one, Control E, mark seam. Alright, so if we select our couch and go U Unwrap, we have a decent unwrap job. So this will be, again, scaled to match our texture, but we can leave it as is for now. Same thing with this. We're just going to select the edges here, 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 and here. So select this edge and that edge. Control Z, grab that edge. Alright, so we have a box selected around both sides. Perfect. Control E, mark seam, and then just that center bottom edge there. Control E, mark seam. hit L, and unwrap it. And that is a nice unwrap. Alright, so let's start with one of the trickier materials, but one of the coolest looking materials, and that's the floor. So the floor is really the only thing that's different from the walls, ceiling, and beams. Besides that, these are all the same. So let's go ahead and unwrap the floor. We didn't do that a moment ago, so we have to just grab that bottom face, U, and unwrap, and that's really all we need to do for that. So, for the floor material, I got the material off of CG Textures, and there's going to be links to those again in the description. But let's go ahead and let's create it now. Okay, so we're going to hit the plus key, and we're going to grab that material again, and then we're going to hit that button right there, the 75, and we'll change this to floor. All right, check that. All right, so now we're going to tab into edit mode, grab that floor face, and assign it to this material. With that done, we can go ahead to our object here, and we can start working on our floor material. So we're just going to have to open up a bunch of textures to start off. So I'm going to go Shift A, add in a texture, an image texture. We're going to open our albino texture, and that is basically the base color texture with no shading or anything applied to it. So that is the diffuse right there. So the marble polished diffuse, you want to open up that one. Again, you can download them from CG Textures, and you can get a free account and download up to 15 textures a day. So now I'm going to duplicate it, and this one is going to be the specular. So let's see, specular. All right, we don't have a, oh, it's the gloss. All right, so grab the gloss, and we'll plug that into the specular. Same thing, really. And then we'll duplicate it again, grab that material. We'll take the roughness next, and we'll plug that into the roughness on our PBR material. And then we'll duplicate it again. And we'll take the normal map, and go ahead and duplicate it again and grab the height map. Now we're going to combine these two together with a bump node. So I'm going to go Shift Add Vector Bump. The normal map here, we're going to change from color to non-color data, and we'll connect it to the normal map. Now we're also going to have to drop another node in here, and that is the vector normal map node. So drop that in there between them, and you'll have your normal map loaded up. We can grab the UV texture there too, and then we're going to connect this to the height of our bump, and then the normal to the normal on our floor. Okay, so with all these connected up, we can save our project. And we're going to have to tweak the UV map of our floor texture a bit. So let me just show you real quick. I can tab into edit mode, select that face, and if I go to textured view, we should be able to see, if I select this texture, our color texture. And it's way too big right now. So I'm going to scale this in our UV image editor here until we get about the right scale in our scene. And then scale on the Y too, just to reduce any stretching, but I guess it's already pretty good. Alright, so let me kind of zoom in here, and I feel like something like that is pretty good. Maybe even less, a little bit more like that would be good. Okay, cool. Okay, now in camera view, because it takes a while to render the whole scene right now as a whole, what you can do to speed it up is go Shift B, and Shift B allows you to box select an area. And then, let me unselect that. Shift B allows you to select an area like this, and only render that area as the preview for the whole scene. So it renders much faster. So it's a lot easier for working on little areas like this to preview your material. So I'm going to go ahead and select an area like that, and go rendered view to kind of see how our material is coming about. Give it a second to load, and you can see our material is coming in. Now it's a little bit too sharp, and so there's definitely some tweaking that needs to be done. But you can see in general that it's looking like a material more or less. All right, so now that we have all the textures connected, we can come through and tweak them to be the appropriate values. So right off the bat, the bump is way too strong in my opinion. So I took this and I reduced it way down. I take the strength down to about a 0.1 on our normal map, and then a strength down to about a 0.15 or so on our height map. Change that to about 0.15. And that will be a better amount of bump. Okay, so now for the roughness, I thought a little bit more roughness matched this material better. So I actually take this texture and I add another one to it. So I'm going to go Shift A, add in another image texture. I'm going to open up our concrete texture. So this is another one you'll find in the description. So go ahead and download this one. It's Concrete Bear. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to go color mix and add. So this is going to be just kind of a mixture of the default roughness value. Whoops, I didn't want to open that up again. And the concrete texture. So I'm going to drop it in the bottom here. Whoops, things are lagging a little bit. Connect it to the bottom. And we'll leave it at about a 0.5 mix. That's all we really need. And this is going to be the roughness and also the clear coat roughness. So if I make this a little bigger, you can see that this is clear coat roughness. And we will be adding a little bit of clear coat to our floor as well, because this gives you another sort of thin layer of specular, you can imagine it, on your material. So the sheen and the clear coat are both kind of similar in the ways they work, but the clear coat is what I use for the floor, and that helps give it a nice look. Also, I'll take the IOR down to about a 1.35, and then I'll give it about a 0.5 in clear coat for another little extra glossy layer. Okay, so with that all set up, now we just need to kind of tweak the specular texture here a little bit and the color texture. So the specular, I took the contrast down a bit on it to give it a little less sharp in the specular areas. So to do this, I just dropped the brightness and contrast in, take it down a few notches, and now it won't be quite as specular. And then for the albino / color texture, I'll just refer to it as color. I took a RGB curves, so color, RGB curves, dropped it in here, and then we kind of make it a little bit more red by giving it a little bit of red value, and then a tad bit of green. Now this kind of needs to be done in real time, so and a little less blue. So I will start rendering here. It just kind of slows things down a little bit to be rendering, but I will do it so we can see what's happening. So I'll save this. And then I'm also going to drop a brightness and contrast node in on this too, so we can have more control here. And I want the contrast to be a bit lower. Okay, so we'll go to rendered view, so we can see the changes we're making in real time here. And you can already see our materials looking a lot better. And maybe we could use it a little bit more red. Okay, and let's kind of grab another area here just by Shift Being. It's looking pretty good though. So I can't really make any more changes until I have more of the other materials worked out, I feel, because that's looking pretty solid. I will take the brightness down just a little bit on it by taking the notch down right there, and maybe just a little less contrast, but that should be good. So that should really wrap up our material for the time being. We can kind of check different areas of it by going around and Shift Being an area. But overall, if we think it's looking good, we can increase our preview sampling over here so we can get a little bit more detail in what it's looking like. We might be good to go. It's looking pretty good. Maybe the bump is a little strong still, so I might take the height down a little bit here, drop that down to about a 0.2, and I think that that will look a little nicer. Okay, so something we can do to kind of speed up our viewport here is we can reduce the preview on our sculpt here. So let's just go ahead and select our couch there, go to our modifiers tab, and take the preview down to, we can go all the way down to 1, but let's leave it at 2 so it looks a little nicer. And then for like the cushions here, we can go down all the way to 1, and just reducing the amount of resolution seen in the viewport will speed things up quite a bit. So I'm just taking a lot of these down most of the way, and it will still render at a 5, but it's just previewing it at a lower quality. Now another thing I also noticed is that working with materials can be laggy when something with a high sculpt like this has material on it. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not, but just taking off the materials of the things you have sculpted until we actually add those materials, which I will be in a little bit, but I'm just taking off the materials for now, so I don't have that sort of lag working with materials. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the wood material now, because the wood material is kind of used across the whole scene in a lot of different areas, just slightly modified. So we can go ahead and work on that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift B and make sure that just the the wood section over here is highlighted, and we'll work on this material now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. We'll go new material here, and we'll change it to, click new. We'll make this one wood. All right. Let that load a second. As you can see, it's a little bit laggy right now. I'm not exactly sure why, but we'll go ahead and delete the diffuse, go Shift A, add in a shader and a principled shader. And then we'll connect that up. And another thing we can do right away is enable the Node Wrangler add-on, because this is helpful for previewing our materials in cycles. So I'm going to go to add-ons, start typing in Node, and you'll see it pop up right there, Node Wrangler. Just click that checkbox to enable it, and you'll be good to go. All right, so now we can go ahead and load in some textures. We're going to be using this wood texture right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go Shift A, add in a texture, an image texture. We'll go ahead and open up that wood texture. It is this one right here, and we'll connect it to the base color. All right, so now we're going to kind of modify this texture to use it as a specular, roughness, and bump. Instead of having separate textures, because in this case I just have the one, we can use it and kind of modify it with a few nodes to make it work for the roughness and bump, etc. Okay, so to kind of preview what we're getting already, we can switch to rendered view right here, and we'll kind of see our texture coming out on the wood right here, kind of plain because we haven't added much to it, and it's a little dull. So one thing first is we're going to want to increase the amount of contrast over in our color management tab to make it look a bit better. So I'm going to go to the look, and I'm going to go to about a medium-high contrast to start, just so we have a little more contrast on our scene. And then I'm going to kind of start tweaking our wood material to get more of the color that we want. So let's give ourselves a little bit more room to work here by pulling that window over and then centering this a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and add a brightness and contrast. So color, brightness, and contrast. And we're just going to give it a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and go up 2 ticks. And you can see that'll look a little nicer already. And then I'm going to give it a tiny bit of saturation. So I'm adding the hue saturation node and dropping it in there. And I'll give it just a 0.01. So we give it a little bit more, and then I'm going to go ahead and increase the value here to be about a 0.1 or a 1.2. So we have a little bit of a brighter wood as well. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add in a roughness map. So to do this, I'm just going to modify our texture by duplicating our brightness and contrast node, dropping it into there, and then we're going to take the contrast down to about a -4. So if I go Control Shift and click on the brightness and contrast node, you can see we'll get a little preview of what this node is looking like. And we can also see that the wood grain on our wood is messed up a little bit. So let's go ahead and fix that right now. So first off, it's just a little bit of a UV issue. I'd like the grain to be moving this ways instead of this ways. So if I switch to textured view, we can go ahead and see it right here nice and quick. If I hit L, I can just rotate that texture 90 degrees, and then we have it going the right way. Also, this backboard never got unwrapped, so I'm just going to grab that face and go U Unwrap, and we'll have, whoops, wrong board right there, U Unwrap. And then you can see we have the wood across the backboard there nicely. And then, okay, we didn't get this log here, so I'm just going to go L, U Unwrap, and then we'll rotate that 90 degrees like before. And then we also need to assign our wood material to it. So grab the wood material, click Assign, and there we go. So if I quick check this here, by panning around, we can see that our wood is nicely laid out across all those boards. Awesome. So let's go ahead and work on that material a little bit more like I was. We can go ahead and save our project now. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a color ramp to convert this to a black and white image, and then also be able to tweak the whites and blacks a little bit. So I'm dropping that in right there. And I'm going to take the blacks and just a tad. Not too much. We just need a little bit. Just to give it a little bit more black. There we go. And then I can drop it into the roughness. So if I go Control Shift, click that, and we switch to rendered view, we should start to see the material coming together with the roughness map. And it's hard to tell in this little kind of grainy preview, but it is getting a nicer shine across it, being controlled by the brightness and contrast and color ramp node here. Now I'm going to duplicate the color ramp to control the specular here. So I'm just going to move this to give myself a little bit more room. And we'll go ahead and Shift D this color ramp node. We can use the same contrast, brightness and contrast output here. So we'll just connect that to the new color ramp. And then this color is going to control the specular. Now for the specular, I want more blacks and more whites. So I'm going to go Control Shift so you guys can see exactly what I'm getting here. And some more blacks and then some more whites, just to give it a little bit more of a contrast between black and white. And this will give it a better result for the specular to kind of be shiny on certain areas and not on others. So that will look nicely. It'll look nice. And I'm going to go ahead and add the bump now. So for the bump, it's pretty simple and is really important because it adds probably the most little bit of realism to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the vector bump node. I'm going to connect the normal to the normal on our principled shader. And then I'm going to duplicate the brightness contrast and the color ramp node here. So I'm just going to grab both of them, hit Shift D. That will drop the color into the color of the brightness contrast node. And for this, I want a little bit of contrast. So I'm going to change it from -4 to 0.1. And then I'll drop the color into the height of our bump map here. And kind of pull in the whites a little bit for a little bit more contrast between the whites and blacks. I can give you a little preview here of what it's looking like. And that should do it. I just need to take the strength way down because it's going to be way too much right now. So I'll go 0.08. And we'll go ahead and Shift click or Control Shift click our principled shader. And we'll see a little bit of bump coming in here. If I zoomed in and let it kind of sharpen, you would see it. But I'm going to finish up tweaking a few more settings on our principled shader. First of all, the IOR can come down to about a 1.35, something a little less. And then it looks good with a little bit of clear coat, like someone finished the wood with a shiny, glossy finish. So the clear coat can kind of add that to it. So I'm going to go ahead and give it about a 0.445. So just about a little bit, well, about half of the clear coat amount added to it. And then I'm going to increase the roughness a little bit on the clear coat, giving it a 0.08. So go ahead and add that in, and that is all you have to do on your principled shader. So that is our wood material, guys, and we can tweak it a little bit for the variations, and we'll be adjusting the saturation and stuff for kind of a dollar wood or a more enhanced looking wood. But that's looking pretty nice. All right, so we can use that same wood material for the poles on our little tables here. So I'm just going to zoom in, and because we already unwrapped these, it should be nice and easy to just tab into edit mode, grab them all, just go L to select all the legs, click new material, and then we're going to grab the wood material right there, and we'll click assign. That's all you have to do. Same thing with these over here, just hit L to grab those, and then click assign. Whoop. First click the plus key to bring that wood material in, and then click assign. And that should do it. Now for this stool, it's a little bit of a different material because this one is a little bit of a paler looking wood. So for some variation, we're going to go ahead and bring that wood material in again. But now I'm going to hit tab, or first assign it, and then hit tab, and click that 4 to make it its own material. So you can see it's now wood 001. And this will be kind of our pale wood material. So for this one, I'm going to take the saturation down a bit, down to about a 0.7. And I'll take the brightness up a little bit more. So we'll go up to about a 1.3. And this just kind of gives it a nice looking variant in the colors. And I can give it a little bit of brightness too. And then a little bit more contrast. And now we'll just kind of preview what that's looking like by going into camera view. Going Shift B just to select our wood poles there so we can see just those areas. And we'll also want to give this top disc the material. And also, I don't think I unwrapped this, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick as well. We just need to select both the top and bottom, go Control E, mark seam, and then we need a seam along the edge here. So I'll go right there, and let me just grab that edge right there. Okay, Control E, mark seam, and now I can grab that whole plate by hitting L, grabbing all of them, and going U, unwrap. And I'll just scale that up along the Y a little bit to make it look a little bit more even, and that should look okay. But I'm going to go ahead and select that edge loop there, and then go U and cylinder projection. And this will give us a band like I want, and I can just go ahead and scale it up, pull it down, and scale it along the Y-axis a bit. Now we don't really like that loopy effect, so I'll just go Alt right click that top line, scale along the Y to 0, and that will straighten it out. Same with the bottom. Alt right click it, scale along the Y to 0, and now we have a nice straight edge, and that will look better with the material. So we can go ahead and give it that wood 001 material, which is our pale wood, and let's go ahead and see what that's looking like as a little preview here, and we'll save our project and switch to rendered view. Alright, so you can see the color is looking pretty good, but it's a little bit too shiny for a paler wood material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the material here, and I'm just going to take this specular, and I'm going to take the white value and make it less white. So the darker this is, the less specularity we'll have. So reducing this down, you'll see we'll kind of cut away. If I took it all the way down to 0, you'd see it would be completely flat. But I do want some specular, but just not as much. So pulling that color down to a darker value will take away the specular on the wood and just make it look a little bit more realistic. So I feel like something like that is good. Taking it down to about a 0.18 on all your values will give it kind of a nice flatter looking wood material. Alright, so this is looking pretty decent, and let's move on to the next wood material, which will be the wood back on the windowsill here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch out of rendered view here, and we'll select our wood back from the corner there. Here we're going to go ahead and select the different faces for our wood there, hitting period to kind of zoom in on that area. I'm going to grab the different faces that are wood. So just the wraparound and the top is all you really need. And we just need to take our wood material and assign it. So with that done, we can go ahead and check to see if that's looking good in textured view. And it looks like it's going to be pretty good. So we can go ahead and leave that and move on to the next part, which will be, let's go ahead and do this little shelf here. As long as we're over here anyways, we'll just go ahead and hit the plus key, grab the wood material, and assign it. So we're going to tab into edit mode, select all faces, and assign the wood material. And you can see that that looks pretty nice. So this is the super easy part of the tutorial, where we're just kind of going around, grabbing the different surfaces. Let's go ahead and do these cabinets as well, and assigning our materials to them. So I'm going to hit L on our different pieces of cabinet here to select those different areas, and we'll assign the wood material to them. And you can see that because we unwrapped it, it's all looking pretty decent. And that's good. So we can move on now to the stairs, because these are also wood. So I'm just going to tab into edit mode, and we'll go ahead and hit L on every stair to select the entire step. And then you guessed it, we can go ahead and assign our wood material to it. So let's just finish this up across the top here, hitting L and selecting all of our different steps. Shift L to unselect the ones we don't want, and plus grab the wood material and assign. So with that assigned, we should see the wood material pop up there real quick. There we have it. It looks like the grain is moving the wrong direction on some of these steps. So we might have to grab these faces if we want to fix that. We just hit L to grab these and rotate them 90 degrees. So I'll grab all that, rotate 90 degrees, and then you can see the wood is moving the right direction. All right, and that's looking very nice. So I believe the last wood material would be the little shelves back here, where we can just grab these, hit L on both of them, and add in that wood material again. We can assign that to it, and if it looks like it's nicely laid out with the unwrapping, that should do it. And that looks very nice. So that should do it for our wood materials, I believe. Yes. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the glossy materials like the stairs here. So for the stairs, we're going to go ahead and click plus, and we're going to create a new material. Actually, we can just use this material here and modify it. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that material, grab this one, and hit that checkbox to make it its own material. And we have our principled shader here ready to be modified. And for this, it's going to be a mostly black color. So I'm going to take our black almost all the way down, but not quite. It looks good if you don't go all the way to the black, so just a little bit above. All right, and now we're going to give it a bit of specular, but not quite 0.5. So we'll go 0.25 for the specular. And then for the roughness, I actually grabbed that same concrete texture just to add a little variation, like some smudges and stuff, to the shininess on our glossy material here. So to do that, it's just going to be shader, image texture. We're going to go ahead and grab that same concrete material, so the concrete bear, and we're going to use a brightness and contrast node to tweak it like we did the other roughness maps. So we're going to drop the color into the color, and then just take the contrast down to about a -0.4, and then this can control the roughness. So we'll go ahead and do that. And for this, I gave it a little bit of sheen for some variation. So go ahead and give it a little bit of sheen. We don't need any clear coat, and that should do it. So with those value set. We might want to take our IO down a little bit too, just because 1.35 is more the norm for most materials I find. And with that done, we can go ahead and see what this is looking like. So, and we'll save our project, go into camera view, and let's do a little preview render of what our stairs are looking like over here. All right, so go to rendered view. We'll let that load in. You know what, we can turn off our background image now. It's just kind of distracting, so click that eyeball on the background image. And that's coming in pretty nice. So we can go ahead and leave that for now and move on to the next material, which will be, well, let's create a variation of that black glossy. So first of all, let's name it, just so we don't get too lost. We'll call it black glossy. And for something like this pole here, I use the same material, so I'll assign that, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. So I'm going to hit the plus key actually and grab that black glossy. So now we can tap that 2 and make it a separate material. And this one is going to be not as flat. It's a little shinier, almost like a metal or something. So for this material, let me quick pull up my scene here just so I can make sure I get this right. Yes. All right, so for this material, it's going to be a little bit more specular, so we can increase the specular up to about a 0.3, and the roughness is going to be much less. So I'm going to uncheck that. We don't need it for this material, and I'm just going to take the roughness down to about a 0.08. So way down to about a 0.08, so it's going to be pretty shiny. We can go ahead and leave the sheen as it is, and that should do it. So with that set, we're going to have just more of a shiny material for that pole. And while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and do the material for our TV. So this material is going to be fun. This is just a basic, pretty much the same as the black glossy, except a little bit more reflective. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and hit that button there to make it its own material. We're going to take the color way down, but not all the way down. So not a complete black, kind of a very dark gray, and they can be tweaked if we need to. The specular is going to be not super strong, so about a 0.1 for the specular. And then the roughness is going to be very shallow, so it's going to be very reflective, going all the way down to about a 0.02. So I'll leave it at 0.028. So that's going to give you some nice reflections in your television. So it's kind of like a glossy television set. And then we're going to give it a little bit of sheen, and we can give it a little bit of a clear coat too. Both those will just add a very, very subtle bit of reflectivity to it and shininess. And I'll take the IOR down to about a 0.13. So we'll go ahead and do that, 1.3 I should say. And that will do it for our television material. So if we go ahead and save this, and let's check out what this is looking like, we should be able to see some reflections in our television from the other windows out of the view maybe. And we can see some sort of reflections in here. It's very dark, so it's hard to see exactly. But if I take the base color up a little bit, we might be able to see a little bit more. All right, so you can see it's coming in. It's just very shallow. We might still be brightening our scene up a little bit more to be able to see that more visible. But for now, we can leave it as it is because we can see that it's working. And I'll go ahead and work on the next material now. Okay, so let's finish up the materials on our little stereo headset player thing over here. Not headset, but stereo set here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our box here. And first off, let's just give it the black glossy material. So right now, everything is the black glossy material. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus key though, grab that black glossy material and hit that checkbox so we can make a variation of it for some of these materials that we don't want to look exactly the same. So kind of adding some variation into these materials will give it a better looking result, I think. So first off, we'll go ahead and select our box here. And this one, actually this is already a separate object, so I can go ahead and grab that black glossy 2 material. Let me just start typing it out here in black glossy 2. All right, and we'll hit that checkbox to make it its own material again. And this one we're going to do a little bit, we're going to take the roughness down a little bit here by increasing the contrast. And then I'm just going to tweak it to be a bit different than the other materials. So maybe this one is going to have a little bit of clear coat, like this is just a little bit of a shinier plastic. And you can also kind of play around with the anastrophic setting right here, this kind of gives it just a variation in the way the reflections look. It kind of changes the way the light hits it. It's usually used for like pots and pans, but for anything metallic, a little bit of it can help a little bit. So I kind of played around with this a little bit and kind of like the results, so I'll just go ahead and add some of it to it right now. And then the color, we can make it a little bit of a brighter color. But that's about it. We're not going to really see the roughness working here unless we unwrap it, I guess. So we have to do a quick, we can just do a UV project unwrap on that. And the same with our monitor here. I have to unwrap that if I want to, we'll just do a smart UV project again. If we want our roughness to be doing anything. I guess that same thing applies to the steps here. I didn't really think about that, but we should just grab our two beams and go Smart UV Project. So our roughness map will do a little bit more to be visible. I'll scale it up a little bit then as well. All right. Okay, so back to work on our stereo set here. I'm going to go to camera view to work on these materials so we can be previewing them a little bit. I'll go ahead and go render to see what these are looking like. Okay, so it's a little dark still back here. I'm going to go ahead and increase our, actually I somehow left this really dark. Let me grab this one, yep, and brighten it up quite a bit, just so it's more of a gray material and we can see the headset in there a little bit more. I keep calling it a headset. Stereo is what I'll go, stereo. Okay, and then let's go ahead and solid, and we can add some variation even to this. So I can grab like this band here, this edge here, hit Control plus to select everything but these two faces. All right, and I'll pull this down, hit the plus key, and we'll grab a black glossy 2 for this one, and just go ahead and assign that to it. I'll go ahead and brighten this up a bit, but maybe a different shade of black, just so we have two different shades of black, and they kind of give some nice contrast on the object there. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and make one more material here. We'll grab that black glossy again, but hit that checkbox to make it separate, and I'm going to name this one silver. So this is going to be, well, that is not how you spell silver. All right, so this is going to be for some like the buttons and stuff. That is just kind of a shiny silver material. So to do that, I'm going to hit period on here to zoom in over here. We'll select some of our buttons here. Like, let's just grab all of these across the front here, assign the silver material, and this material is going to be, we don't need to affect the roughness on it. This is going to be a very bright gray, and then we're going to change it to be completely metallic. So doing that is going to give it a different sort of material surface, one that's very reflective and metallic looking, basically. We can give it a little bit of a shinier material, but taking the specular down a bit. And we definitely want to take the roughness down quite a bit too, to be reflective as a shiny material. And then we can give it some anastrophic as well to kind of give it those weird light bounces on a silver material like that. All right, so I can take the sheen down a little bit too. Not really visible in a case like this, so it doesn't matter too much. But yeah, just in case you see it, we'll do that. And then I'm also going to grab this ring around our button here, hit Control plus, and assign that. So the outer ring will kind of light up now, and that'll look kind of neat. And maybe we'll give this the black glossy 3 material. So if I go select, that's all that material, and I go select here, and that's that material. Cool. We have some buttons up here too that could use that silver material. So we'll go ahead and assign those. But that should be looking pretty good. If I go to camera view here, we can quick check that out in a preview render. And I'm thinking, fingers crossed, that will look semi-decent. All right, and you can see that we have some nice details kind of coming out now, and it's looking pretty good. So we can leave that and move on to another material. This is just going to be for the wireframe on these here. Yes. So this is going to be, we can just give this the black glossy material. All right. But giving the material behind it sort of a different material will give it kind of a cool look, because you'll have the cover and then something a little brighter behind it. So to do that, you have to go to your wireframe modifier, and you have to tell it to be the material offset of 1. So by doing that, we can go ahead and add a new material here. New material. Actually, let's just make this one that we already have here. The lighter gray one, which I believe is the black glossy 2. or black glossy 3 is the lightest gray actually. And we'll just move that up to top. So now 1 is going to be this one, and then the back is going to be the brighter gray here. We can make this slightly brighter too. Okay, so we need to assign our brighter gray material here to the back of our UV here, our kind of sphere here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit assign, and then this one will be the second one because we changed it in the modifiers there. So to show off how this is working, if I kind of box select right over here and go render, you should be able to see that the background is kind of a lighter gray, and then you see more of that wireframe over the front, and that's working the way we want it. So it kind of shines on that material a little bit, makes it a little bit different. All right, so speaking about different, let's go ahead and give these materials a little bit of variation by grabbing the other material here and giving it the slightly gray material, and then making the speakers here the first one. And you can even get a little fancy and grab like that inner button there, Control plus to get the edges, and give that a different material as well, like the black gloss, or actually this one, yeah. So then if you ever want to check to see what has what material, you just go select, and you can see that this is going to be the slightly lighter colored, and then this one is going to be the slightly darker colored for the glossier, darker colored looking materials. All right, so that is good. We can go ahead and give our cables a black glossy material too. These aren't super super crucial, but let's go ahead and drop that in there. And that should do it for our stereo set. Okay, so I'm going to have to call it there for part 6, but we'll finish the materials up in part 7 and then do some actual animating and compositing to finish off our scene in a final render. So I hope you guys are having fun. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the series, and I'll see you guys in part 7. Bye!